Welcome to the 2021 Financial Statement Audit Presentation for the Comfort Lake Forest Lake Watershed District. My name is Justin Nelson. I will be walking through a short slideshow presentation to go over the financial results and our audit opinion for the Comfort Lake Watershed District. I'd like to just start by saying thank you to the Watershed District Board of Managers for having us as your audit firm. And I also like to say thank you to everybody on the staff of Comfort Lake Watershed District for all their help preparing things for the audit. We really appreciate your help and couldn't have done it without you. So we will start with the audit results for 2021. So we are going to go over first our audit opinion on the financial statements and related internal controls. We are issuing an unmodified clean audit opinion, which is the audit opinion that the Watershed District is striving for in 2021. So how we arrived at that result is we tested a number of transactions around paying bills, paying employees, looking at grant recognition and agreements. We also looked at what the Board of Managers is getting to make decisions and the internal controls that surround all those related processes. So I'm happy to report in 2021 that we have no internal control audit findings. We have had a couple in the prior years that have been corrected, so I think it really signifies positive progress and results over 2021, having no internal control findings related to any of the processes that we tested. As part of our audit, we are also required to test Minnesota legal compliance and state statutes. I would like to just point out just a couple of those state statutes that we do test for watershed districts. One of them would be timely paying of bills or claims within 35 days, and another would be conflicts of interest with any of the Board of Managers. So we did note no Minnesota legal compliance findings in 2021, and again, no audit findings overall for the watershed district, which again is a really positive thing. All right, the first financial reporting slide that we're going to go through is the general fund balance as it compares to the future year's budget. So we do have a chart here that shows the past 5 years offset by 1 year, comparing the general fund reserves to the future year's budget. So we do see a kind of a trend in both the total general fund balance and the budget kind of in competing directions. So we do see the general fund budget increasing from about 200,000 in 2018 up to about 450,000 in 2022. So we also see kind of a trend in the general fund balance dropping from about 86% of future expenditures down to 7% in 2020. So as part of our audit, we met with the managers and staff just with some of the downward trend in the general fund and looking at the reserve level, and it was approved that the the watershed district did make a transfer of about $330,000 from the project program fund to the general fund, kind of to get it to a benchmark as agreed to, about 50% for this audit. So that was approved, and that's kind of the big activity in the general fund this year to kind of get the reserve levels back to a manageable point of about 50%. So I think just something to consider in future years to ensure that the resources in the general fund are sufficient to cover those expenditures in that rising budget over the prior few years. How we got there a little bit is, again, we look at the general fund budget to actual. So this is just focusing on 2021 revenues, expenditures, and other financing sources and uses. So, the general fund did end up increasing about $200,000, and the overall budget did kind of outline an expectation that it was going to drop about 160,000. So I think overall a positive result for the general fund. Revenues were really close to what was budgeted. No real no significant variance in the general fund revenues. They were all very, very close to what was budgeted. So as well as the expenditures, the largest positive expenditure variance in the general fund related to manager per diems, about $23,000 of a positive variance, offset slightly by some things in the accounting department of about $14,000. So overall, a really positive year for the fund. Good managing of expenditures, and again, it came in a little bit more favorable. And when we consider that transfer in that we talked about on the previous slide, we do have the fund balance of about $227,000 at the end of the year, which again, if you go back to that prior slide, is a 50% of the future year's expenditures. So the final financial piece for the watershed district would be the program and project implementation fund. So we look at that as the budget to actual statement for 2021 as well. So we do have obviously revenues and expenditures, but we also do have kind of some of the loan proceeds that the Watershed District did receive and budget for in 2021. So we'll start with revenues, which were under budget by about $815,000. So we do have a note at the bottom noting that the largest variance related to grant revenue, which is about $780,000 there. So we also have a note stating that grant revenues are only recognized as expenditures for grants are incurred. So that's when the grants are earned. So basically the note there obviously would be that there was maybe some expectations that some of the grants would have been spent further since they were approved or received and whatnot. But again, they would relate to any of the expenditures. So as we go down to the expenditures and we look at the project costs as well, we do note that the expenditures were also under budget by about $800,000 there. So again, the biggest reason and the note that we have below there is related to the individual lake projects, and obviously some of those things tied to the grants. And again, the individual lake projects were under budget by about $900,000 there. So that is the biggest reason for that. So when you look at things, that is the reason for kind of the overall variance there in the revenues and expenditures. So again, as I mentioned earlier, there is another financing source and use of loan proceeds that the Watershed District did apply for and get of about $850,000. And we noted earlier in the presentation that there was an approval of a transfer out to the general fund of about $330,000. So we all said and done, the net change in fund balance was about $100,000. And the fund does have about $1 million of resources available for the future years to pay for some of those future projects, as well as again some unearned revenue in the future for some of those grants that haven't been spent. So overall, a pretty good year for the program and project implementation fund overall. Again, the last slide is just our contact information. So if anybody has any questions or would like to reach out to us, you can see our information and feel free to do so. Obviously, we're doing things via presentation and video. So if you have any questions or if there's anything you'd like to hear more about, feel free to reach out to one of us. We'd be happy to talk to you via phone call or in person or via meeting. So again, thank you everybody for your help in the process. Another successful year and good luck in 2022. Thank you.